YHWH. Some people call him Yahweh, some people Yahuwah. So many different ways that you potentially can pronounce the name of the God of Israel. Everyone is making such a big deal about it on social media these days. Honestly, I don't think it matters, but I mean, have you ever questioned yourself and wanted to know where the Yahweh, YHWH, where did he come from? How did he originate? What concepts, what theological way that these people during ancient times could come up with such a God that turns out to be the number one God by billions of people today because of the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Mormonism. So today we'll kind of go over, the background of YHWH, and we'll talk about how he became the most successful God at least in my opinion, he became the most successful God in human history because, he originally started out as a storm warrior God, and now he's the God that billions of people worship by the word God. So we'll take a deep dive in that today. I'm Calvin Everson, and welcome to the Jewish Skeptic.
Do you know what I found? The more you know, the less you know.
Let's go. Let's talk about the origins of Yahweh, YHWH, whatever you want to call him. There's a lot of debate here on Yahweh, and people seem to fight about it so much, but there's really not a lot of archaeology that we have on this one particular God. So it's kind of crazy to me how everything has migrated to the way it is today. With that being said, we do know from one source, it's an Egyptian source that comes from probably around the time of Ramesses. Ramesses II. Don't hold me to that, that could be wrong. I get my dates mixed up sometimes, so we all human, we mess up. But essentially what this is Egyptian language where they pretty much are insinuating that they are aware of a God that the Shassu, not the Israelites, worship. We seem to think that the Shassu may have been like a nomadic group back during the ancient times that came out of Canaan. We don't know exactly, their background or anything, but we do know that they were nomads. They wandered around and pretty much done the exact same thing ancient civilizations of, that time done. Go in, conquer people's land, take over the land, and make it your home, pretty much. What we believe happened is the Shassu being in the southern part of the Levant, which everyone, if you don't know, the Levant is what they call the Middle East. It was kind of like what they called it back in ancient times. But what we believe has happened is the Shassu started to migrate north from the southern Levant. And of course, they took the name of Yahweh, YHWH, with them. And they appeared to a group of people that most people know as the Israelites. Honestly, there's really no background on where the Israelites came from historically. I mean, if you read the Bible will tell you, how the Israelites originated. But through history, we know that a lot of the stuff in the Bible is synchronized myths from previous civilizations and previous religions before their time. And, it's kind of like it is today. It's even in the music. People they sample and copy old people's songs or whatnot. So I said that to say this: it's a lot easier to take something that you're interested in and kind of spin it and make it your own than create something from scratch. Now, I know a lot of you probably gonna look at me crazy and say he don't know what he's talking about or whatnot, but like I said, there's gonna be a list of sources that you'll see in the description. You'll be able to take a look into these sources and you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. Moving forward, if the Shassu actually migrated into the north part of Canaan, which we believe actually happened, some people that were there, they influenced, and we believe that is who the Israelites are. We know for a fact that there were Yahweh cults in the northern part of Canaan. I mean, we have history and archaeology that shows, at the Tel Dan, right here, picture, that they actually worship Yahweh in these shrines around this time. Okay, so we know these shrines that were built for Yahweh is because people in this area worship Yahweh, and it was more of synchronism, like I was previously talking about. We have to go back and look at the archaic literature that were written by the Israelites to get an idea of what Yahweh was to them, what he meant to them. These verses that I'm pointing at, these verses are labeled some of the most arcane verses from the Hebrew Bible that has been certified by scholars. Some of these we take a look at and we know that some of the literature has been edited. We seem to believe that the song of Devorah was actually wrote to the Canaanite god Baal, because we knew that those people that were in that area during that time, before they were influenced by the Shassu from the Southerners, they actually worshiped the Canaanite pantheon. With that being said, once Yahweh came into the mix with Baal, which was a storm god in Canaanite pantheon, that was kind of a tug between the two. It's kind of like, we really don't care that, Yahweh is a storm god. We already have a storm god. We just want the rain and everything to come so we won't go into a famine. So let me back up. I got ahead of myself. Storm gods were very, very popular in this area because if you didn't have any rain or anything like that, it was real easy for you to go into famine because it's dry land. I'm pretty sure everyone knows exactly how the Holy Land looks. I mean, it's like desert terrain. So it's common sense, you know. On the backside of that area is really known for having real bad flash floods. So we believe that, like I said, the Shassu were the ones who originally worshiped Yahweh. We believe with them migrating up into the north part of Canaan, that's how the ideology of him being a storm god was produced. Now, do we have 100% proof of this? No, but it's just something that scholars have thought about, and they're trying to figure it out, you know. So the influence moved up north, and that's how you got the clash, because you already had a storm god, Baal, from the Canaanite pantheon, and then you got these other people that's bringing Yahweh as their storm god into the north. So you get clashing, you know, when that happens, you know. So eventually, we know from the scriptures in the Bible, I think it's Deuteronomy 39, if I'm not mistaken. I'll go and get the real verse and post it up here for you, so you guys will know what I'm talking about or whatnot. But what we believe happened is, because there was clashing between the two, we believe that the the people of Canaan, the Canaanites, pretty much handed over Yahweh to the Israelites, or the people who wanted to claim him as their one true God or whatnot. The reason we think this is because there is some history that Yahweh was actually part of a Canaanite pantheon. He was a lesser god in the Canaanite pantheon. You know, at one point I didn't believe that Yahweh was actually associated with the Canaanite pantheon, but I went and done some more studying, and he didn't originate in that pantheon, but he kind of he migrated into it or whatnot. So anyway, the Israelites now have, you know, YHWH or Yahweh as their one true God, whatnot. So they go on about their way or whatnot. And as time goes on, we know from history and some good legends and good mythology from the Bible, eventually we get to the part where the Israelites, their kingdom grows, and according to Bible scripture, you had the 12 tribes of Israel, which we know is myth. That's mythic. It's myths. I hate to hurt anyone's feelings or whatnot, but anyway, according to the myth, you had 10 tribes that were in the north, and then you had 2 tribes that was in the south. They eventually split into 2. So you had the kingdom of Israel in the north, and you had the kingdom of Judah in the south. Moving on through history, we know that the northern kingdom was actually conquered by the Assyrians, and anthropology shows us that, and some good scholars and historians have also proved this, that when the Israelites were conquered, some went down into the southern kingdom of Judah. Now, the crazy thing is, and I didn't know this until I researched this and found out about this recently, the northern kingdom had a certain way that they worship Yahweh, and the southern kingdom had a way they worship Yahweh as well. And we seem to believe that, like, the bull idol that, you know, that we see in like Exodus with the story of Moses when he comes off of Mount Sinai and the Israelites are praising and worshiping a golden calf, a bull. Well, that ideology came from the Northern Kingdom, and it's kind of like a sneak diss, really. It's kind of the whole story of Moses. You know, you guys came from the north and you came down here with this bull worshiping Yahweh, and down here in the south we don't do it that way, and now Yahweh's mad at us, type deal. You know, so when you read that whole story in Exodus, it's kind of like a shot at the Northerners, in my opinion. You know. Moving on, so the Assyrians, they conquer the Northern Kingdom or whatnot. A lot of Southern people, a lot of Northerners go into the South. Now, there's a story out there, and I don't know if it's true or not. I think it's just a myth or whatnot, but essentially they were doing some work or something, and they knocked down a wall and they found this scroll or whatnot in one of the, I guess, like synagogues or whatever you want to call it, that they worship Yahweh in. And it had a scroll in it, and this scroll had what we know today as the 613 laws, or as the Jewish people would call it, the 613 mitzvah of Moses, you know, Yahweh, the law, pretty much. Now, don't know if that is 100% correct. I honestly don't know the background to the 613 laws. I think it may be a little bit more in some of the Deuteronomy history that I have yet to study, but I'll eventually get there. But the story is that this scroll had these laws on it, and it was actually taken to a priestess by the name of Huldah from the north, and she had came down to the south because of the conquer from the Assyrians. And she was the one who actually solidified that the words and the literature in the scroll was actually from Yahweh himself. So that's how it was incorporated into the Bible, in my opinion, you know, as far as the law or whatnot. Now, like I said, that's just one story that I heard, not saying it is true. I know people like to take stuff and run with it, you know, but could it have been? Does it make sense? I mean, a lot of stuff makes sense. So I'm not saying that you should take this and say, well, Calvin said this or whatnot. I'm just giving you my thought and my logic on how this turned out. So now we pretty much have the 613 laws, and you know, at this point, everything with Yahweh is pretty much a cult at this time. You know, the Israelites, they have him as their God, and then time goes on, and we know that the second kingdom eventually is conquered by Babylon. The Babylonians come in and they conquer the southern kingdom of Judah, and from there the Israelites go into exile. Now, I'm gonna back up a little bit on this part. So, from what I've studied, from where I originally started at to this point of exile, that is what we call ancient Israelite religion. Some scholars will call it Yahwehism. If you look in the Bibles, the Hebrew Bibles or the Christian Bible or even the Quran, you know, and it jumps out like a sore thumb once you know this stuff. You'll notice that there's really no mention of afterlife, no heaven or hell. I mean, the closest you can even get to anything like that would be like Sheol, is what the ancient Israelites referred to as like the place of the dead. Wasn't, no torture or anything like that. So good and bad people actually all went to this place called Sheol that the ancient Israelites believed in. Like I said, there was no afterlife or any of that kind of stuff. So that's why Yahwehism is completely different than what we see in Judaism, Islam, and Christianity today. Like, there's been a complete shift. Now, do I know why it shifted? Yes, I have the sources to why it shifted, but I think I'm going to save that for another episode. So, going back, the Shassu was a group of people that we know. There's an inscription in Egyptian history that shows that Shassu of Yahweh, they migrate north and get interacted with the so-called Israelites. There's a struggle between two gods. You got Baal and you got Yahweh. They're both storm warrior gods. Going back to the arcane literature that I showed you from the Bible, you'll be able to see that a lot of this stuff is like songs, like kind of like where they kind of amp themselves up to like go into war with different people, within that region, Philistines, Moabites, people in the Bible that the Israelites actually, went into war with or whatnot because YHWH told them to, so that's how we know from the arcane remnants of the Bible that Yahweh originally started out as a war god or a storm war god. It's like I said, they needed those storms to keep their land fertile so they wouldn't go into famine. So what happens over time? Like I said earlier, it's a lot of debate on what happens over time, or, how Yahweh turned out to be who he is. Well, we know from other literature, outside of the Bibles, how Yahweh became what he is today. I mean, he's the God of, like I said, the main three religions here in the world today or whatnot. So that's just me giving you my aspect on the origins of Yahweh from the way I have understood it, from my research. Is there more things inside of what I just discussed? Yeah, it is, but I'm gonna leave that for you guys to discover whenever you reference to the sources that I have in the description. I don't want anyone to think that these little small connecting ladders is trying to make anyone change their faith, because essentially it's what made me change my faith and what made me become skeptic. Knowing and just having common sense and looking at this, and I came to the conclusion that, it's all made up. And I know a lot of people get in their feelings when I say that, but I mean, a spade is a spade at this point, it is what it is. So you guys can go and look into the sources and pick the stuff apart and figure it out however you want to figure it out. But overall, Yahweh started out as a storm warrior god. We can tell by certain parts of the Bible, which are actually the most oldest parts of the Hebrew Bible, which we know is ancient Israelite literature. So it gives you a depiction of who Yahweh was at first. And then as time goes on, he becomes more of a loving, more a God with more charisma, I would say. Oh, no, a lot of people ain't gonna like that, but it is what it is. If you ask me, there's a lot of things in the Bible that I don't agree with. That's just my take on it. There's genocide. Considering that I went back and looked at some stuff in history and finding out that the Philistines were actually in that land the longest, and these Israelites that just come out of nowhere, they go in and conquer Palestine. I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with the story with King David, Saul, Solomon, and all that good stuff. I don't have to go into that, and if I do, then don't take this the wrong way. I think you might need to study a little more. But at the end of the day, that's how I came to my conclusion on Yahweh, based upon understanding the origin and how he went from a storm god, warrior god, to the God that everyone knows today as God. So he morphed through time. Like I said, that's going to be on another episode, though. There's a lot of literature and scripture to cover, but we're going to keep this thing going for sure. If anyone has any questions, comment, say anything like that. And let me back up and say this. I will not tolerate trolling. If I see that, your ass getting blocked, period. I'm just not, I'm not going for it. Like I said, this is for people that are open-minded and they want to know stuff outside of what they've been taught, especially in churches and in the Bible. So this is more historical, stuff that I'm telling you guys, more than what's in the book. So take it however you want to. And like I said, you can go back and fact check this all you want to. And if it's a story, I'm gonna tell you it's a story, kind of like the story with the wall and the scroll. Do I know the real background to that? No, I don't. I just need to go study more. I'm pretty sure it's gonna pop out. Like I said, I believe it might be in a part of the Deuteronomy theological aspect of everything. Within this past week, I was looking into some stuff and I found out that, and y'all gonna think this is crazy when I say this, but I found out that Israel's covenant to Yahweh was essentially a vassal contract. That's crazy. Like, that's how the Israelites got Yahweh appointed as their one God, and in this vassal contract was pretty much, it was like the covenant, hey, I'll take care of your crops. I'll make sure you guys are good as long as you worship me, But before I go, I will say this. Keep in mind, in ancient civilizations back in these times when these people had gods that they worship, if your area got conquered and you got your ass kicked, you was really supposed to get rid of your God, because that God was worshipped right there. That the God didn't go everywhere with you. It was dedicated directly to a temple or a shrine or a synagogue or whatever you want to call it. And considering that the Israelites got their ass beat twice, they was really supposed to get rid of Yahweh. as as their superior God. And I said that to say this, I honestly think that they held on to Yahweh like they did because they had this vassal contract, And I'm finna go do a little bit more looking into that to see like if it's really real. I've heard two people that I like really look up to scholarly wise say something about it, and it's kind of done throw me for a loop. So if that's the real deal, like that really explains a lot on why today the Jews, they really feel like they the chosen people. Like that's really the explanation to it. So I'm gonna say that for another episode too, y'all, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But recap: ancient Egypt, Shassu of Yahweh, 13th century BCE. We think. I mean, that's just me going off the top of my head. Could be wrong. Migrates up north. Turns into the Israelites. They're given Yahweh. He's their storm god, their warrior god, according to the oldest remnants of the Bible. Northern Kingdom gets conquered. They move south. The Southerners get conquered. They go to Persia. Babylon, which was eventually taken over by Persia. That's another episode too, because we can talk about how Zoroastrianism had a synchronized impact on Yahwehism, which is the ancient Israelite religion that we're talking about today, and how the foundation of Zoroastrianism and its belief in good and evil, good deeds, good life. They got three different things that pertain to good, that should be in like the morality of mankind or whatnot. I've just scraped the surface of it. I don't really know a lot about Zoroastrianism, but I know enough about it to know that there was, well, let me back up. Zoroastrianism was the first monotheistic religion in history. So we know that's where the idea came from, to just worship one God. We know that. There's also some other things in Zoroastrianism that has shown me that it really influenced Yahwehism, because Zoroastrianism is the first religion that I've researched that had a background that pertained to a heavenly kingdom and a hell, fiery pit. It also has depictions in there and of angels and demons, a good God, a bad God. So my belief is, and like I said, I don't want to get too far-fetched in this because I'm going to say this for another episode, but my belief is when the Israelites were exiled to Babylon and the Persians came in and they kicked Babylon's ass, it was kind of like triumph from the Israelites, because they were like, the Persians came in and kicked their ass, so their God must be stronger. Well, we don't want to consume their God. We want to keep our God. But let's look at some of their background and logic. And honestly, in my opinion, I feel like that is how you got a different version of Yahwehism after the exile. When the Jews are exiled from, well, not really exiled, but when they go back out of exile, back to their land, back to Jerusalem, when King Cyrus released them to go back, shit, I found out that they didn't even really want to go back. You know, that's the crazy thing. But they went back, but when they got back, a lot of the books in the Bible, you can see like there's a tremendous shift on just like a theological standpoint, because now you start getting to around the time that the book of Isaiah was finalized, the book of Ezekiel, and you start getting these apocalyptic visions, you know. Oh, well, you know, I saw Yahweh in the clouds, or, you know, y'all know all the different stories in the Bible. I mean, I don't have to break them down to you about all these visions and stuff these prophets had, but fact check me on this. Go back and look at everything that I discussed earlier in this episode and tell me if you see any apocalyptic visions or any apocalyptic thoughts in ancient Israelite religion. And I can tell you the answer is no. Period. Go look at those arcane verses I posted earlier, and I guarantee you're not going to see anything apocalyptic. You're not going to see nothing about no adversary, no Satan, none of that. You don't start seeing that kind of stuff until the scribes and stuff start changing their literature and stuff after the exile. Well, once they come out of exile and they go back to Jerusalem or whatnot, you start seeing it like in the book of Job, where, you know, Yahweh is fighting with Satan, you know, to prove to Satan that Job is loyal and all that kind of stuff. You get stories like Jonah the whale. You start getting all these like apocalyptic. And when I say apocalyptic, I don't mean the end of time. I mean visions, like apocalyptic visions. And we know that is tied to what we call mysticism. So it's something completely, it's like some literature and stuff that is completely outside of these Bibles. And I think a lot of people have starting to get access to like apocalyptic literature, but they don't understand the foundation of it. You know, I started spot checking stuff, like when I went and looked at like the Apocalypse of Moses, which is apocalyptic literature that's not actually in the Bible. I looked at when it was wrote, you know, and it's like, okay, so it was written after the Jews came out of exile. So it's apocalyptic literature, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like that builds the foundation to how Yahweh became the God he is today through the Abrahamic faiths. You know, it's a mixture of Jewish apocalyptic literature and the actual Bible. But I'm gonna put y'all up on that stuff later on, so y'all won't be saying he crazy as hell, or, you know, that's how he got his answers, or why he is doing what he doing or whatnot. And then another thing too, I took a seminar. It's actually on YouTube now. I had to pay for this shit, but there's a seminar that you can source, and it gives you all the different historical aspects on ancient Israelite theophany, Merkavah mysticism, Kabbalah mysticism, all that stuff that really influenced my decision on not following Yahweh anymore. But I'm not telling y'all to do that. You know what I'm saying? Keep your faith, because there's a lot of people out here saying that I'm making people break their faith, and that ain't, I said that in my introduction video, that ain't my mission, or that's not my goal. My goal is to let y'all know about this stuff that's outside of these books that people really don't know about. You know, I call it hidden literature. But anyway, I don't want to get on that high horse or whatnot because y'all really gonna think I'm crazy. But yeah, so that's the origins of Yahweh pretty much in a nutshell. If you want to take a deeper dive into it, then like I said, those sources are going to be posted up here when it comes to the different verses and all that kind of stuff, and then all the different books and all that kind of stuff that I read through like PDF versions and stuff, or through like Kindle. All that, I'm gonna have all those sources in the description. So it is what it is. Like I said at the beginning of the video, Yahweh is the most successful God in human history to me, because I mean, to me, it's like, it proves you should never quit. I mean, shit. I mean, you start out as a little storm warrior god, and now you're the God that everyone worships by billions of people. You know, so never give up. You never know where you end up at. With that being said, y'all drop comments or whatever. I'm out, and until next time, be easy.